So, listen, after a few weeks away, I'm back to sort this shit show out and get it back on the road. And a bonus as well, John, this week, because we've lost Mark Flanagan and all that beautiful, insightful input that he offers in the 27 words that he brings to us every episode.
Have we lost him forever? Is he gone forever?
Unfortunately, fear not. I'm told he's on a tacky Spanish family holiday and he's going to be back next week.
Yeah.
So,
all inclusive sort of gig, isn't it?
Proper Saddleworth sort of thing, you know. We've upped the stakes and we're joined by the brilliant Ryan Hall. Ryan, welcome to Out of Your League, mate. Good to have you on. And fresh, we should say, Ryan, off the back of your 400th career appearance last week, which is some going. I think it's not quite up there with Wilkin level yet, but the double over Wigan for the first time from a Hull KR point of view in 37 years. That was a special day for you and the club, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I didn't realise it was 400. I think they've counted a couple of them exile games in there as well.
They don't count, do they?
No.
Well.
I ran around in them, but I don't think it was classed as a cap or anything like that. But, I'll be happy to get there. It snuck up on me. I don't feel I'm old enough to get that anyway.
I know. I was going to say, Wilkin? What did you get to?
I was around the 500 mark, Will, when I finished. But a bit like Ryan, what he's saying there is like time's really funny, isn't it? Because it's only at those points in like the future. So Ryan's got to 400 games. That's when you hit those landmarks. You start to actually realise how long you've been playing. And as Hawley, he says, well, he's surprised he's got there and it came round quick. Well, for everybody who's been watching rugby league, it feels like Ryan Hall's been playing forever. So, it doesn't. As slowly as it goes for you, it's been a remarkable career, full of all sorts. So but congratulations on the 400. How good is it to be introduced as the brilliant Ryan Hall? Because that, as an introduction, that's pretty good.
I'll keep arms out of it. Well, that's why I play on wing. Because I'm not in the mix of it. I stand outside, unassuming, just try to go under the radar a little bit. But people keep jazzing it up a little bit, calling me brilliant and that.
Oh no, I'll mug you off in about 5 minutes, Ryan. I just don't know you that well enough to do that just yet. But no, listen, mate. Those sort of hallmarks, those milestones, whatever. I guess they do make you quite emotional, really, because obviously you don't concentrate on the numbers really until you sort of sit back and it's all over. And you can look back and read your leather-bound books and sort of talk to your grandchildren about what you did. But time is a funny concept, isn't it? And I know you're only 33, really, so those numbers could be going up and up. But like Wilco said, it only seems like yesterday you were, a whippersnapper in that Leeds side.
It was funny because Tony Smith actually said to me before the game, because he's the coach now at Hull KR, he gave me my 400 game. He also got me first as well. He also I remember in the changing room on my debut, him pulling my shirt on for me because it never fits properly, so he has to pull it down. And he was actually the one who pulled it on. And so it's like little things like that. Obviously, it's been a long career. It's little things like that you really stick in your mind, like for odd occurrences. I don't know why, but I remember, where I was, on, Magic Weekend. I come on at 60 minutes into the game. So I made my debut in the first ever Magic Weekend and I played 20 minutes of that game. And it's weird why I remember that. But then if you ask me about game, 39, I'll have no idea what went on in that. But the big things, because it mattered a lot. I think debuts, matter. And the way that the game panned out as well, it was the one where Jordan Tansey scored from being in an offside position. Yeah. That was the game. So obviously it got a bit of media attention in that game as well, so it was a really good debut to be in.
Wilco, what were your memories then of playing against Ryan, particularly in those Leeds days? I mean, you never got near him, did you? But he was some specimen, wasn't he? And arguably still is this season because he's still smashing it.
Yeah, I mean, when you played against Ryan, you mentioned 400 games. That all that speaks of is the volume in somebody's career. It speaks of a number of appearances, and there's many players get to 400 appearances, but I'm more about the quality, and it's more the quality what Ryan's brought to the game that I find interesting. And you ask Will what it was like sort of playing against him. Well, Ryan was one of those players, probably there was a period in the game where, you know, Bradford and bigger sides of the past had huge wingers like a Leslie Vainicolo, and there was sides that had sort of big outside backs, but it was they weren't very mobile. And I think Ryan was one of the first guys with such a strong carry, you know, coming out of his own half, but mobile as well. And then you put on top of that, you know, his finishing ability. He still is and was a very, very difficult player to play against. And, you know, the measure of, I think, of how good a player is how much time you spend on preview, when you're previewing like a team, when you're looking at their you know, their last appearances, how much time you spend, you know, focusing on one particular player. Well, when we played at Saints, God, we'd do endless drills trying to, you know, run Ryan off the ball when the kicks were sort of coming across, because we knew he could get a catch or whatever. And so I suppose the measure and the biggest compliment you can play is he always pretty much featured in how we built up to games against Leeds quite prominently, and you know, not in a way where you try and sort of get after his weaknesses. It was trying to like dull down his strengths. So yeah.
Well, look, that's the question. I guess let's flip it and see what Tony Smith's PowerPoint presentations were like. Did Wilkin ever get a mention in those?
Well, he did, because he actually often played out of position when he played against us. He was a back rower who played 6, wasn't it? Yeah. I remember you playing a lot of times 6 or 7 against us. Like, we'll call out a position, but you played very well in them positions. But yeah, that's true what John's saying about, you know, that is a measure of the player that you're playing against, is how long you look at them. I've never seen a Saints preview, so I wouldn't have known that I ever came up on them videos. But yeah, it's definitely from personal point of view. We spend a lot of time. For instance, now when we play Catalans, it's Sam Tompkins. It stopped Sam Tompkins. You know, if you're in the video for an hour, half an hour of the video is about Sam, which is true. Like, obviously, you see the displays that he's played this year and how he's playing, and you know, it's probably, you know, correct why we do that. And so yeah, he's right, is what John's saying.
Yeah, look, you boys did play for England together. I know you overlapped a little bit, Wilco, didn't you, for a couple of years? Any England stories? Like, just before we came on, we were talking about the Sean Long pissing in your drawer and flooding your passport, but you know, Ryan's already heard that one. So any other fresh Ryan Hall? Was he quite well behaved, quite sensible?
I'll start off, but I'm quite reserved normally. Like, Longy's one end at scale, and I'm at the other, really. So I'm quite a normal, and, you know, I try and just keep my head down. So I don't think, unless he's going to surprise me or something, I don't think he's going to conjure anything up here.
No, Ryan never wet the bed after nights out. That's a great start. He never urinated in the bedside table in hotels, which is good. One thing I say about Ryan, actually, you know, when you work in teams, or you play in a team for a long period of time. Excuse my dog. My dogs are just kicking off at the pop. So I think my wife orders something from Amazon every day. Like, every day we get deliveries of something. So something's
was
just
that noise Fran or your dog?
It was the dog. It was the dog. I think. Yeah. I think. Yeah. So when you playing a team, there's all sorts of personalities, and people stand out for a number of reasons. And you know, you referenced Sean Long. Sean Long was like a mercurial, sort of roguish character, and a lot of the stories of Sean revolved around that. Well, you know, Ryan stood out for me when we played with him because 2 things. One, he was pretty quiet, he was intelligent, he was diligent. He wasn't, I would say this, he wasn't scared of being himself. And my initial impression of Ryan is that he's quite considered, he's quite sort of well put together. And like little clues, like, you know, bringing a Rubik's Cube to camp and completing it in an outrageously quick time. But yeah,
well, do you know what, Wilco? That's a really good point, actually, because I wanted to touch on this later. But as you mentioned that, because Ryan, I don't know you at all in terms of personality-wise. Obviously, you know what you did on the pitch and what you're still doing, but you do have a reputation of being quite excellent, as in sort of what's the word? What's that film? Beautiful Mind style, Russell Crowe style, but at maths. And you were brilliant at maths at school. You studied accountancy, you did a degree in accountancy, and I think you could have taken that into your career path absolutely. So, and you kind of take that into your game. You look at things statistically and mathematically.
A lot of what's punched out after games is stats analysing the game. So then if you try and look at the beforehand and what you need to do to be good, it kind of fits in with my personality and what John's saying. Like I don't know why I am this way. It's just how I am. At school, I just seem to be good at maths. So obviously, if you're good at things, you tend to enjoy them a lot more. So obviously, once you're good at it, you enjoy it, then you get more. You spend a lot of time doing it. So when I went to college, 50% of my lessons were maths because I did maths and further maths. And then physics. So I was just doing maths constantly. So you tend to...
Fucking maths everywhere.
So it tends to make an impression on you. So when I go into a different environment, because I've still got numbers flying around my head, I tend to be like how I am. Just, referring everything back to numbers and trying to reason things through numbers.
That is interesting. I mean, you'd never have known that really, would you, about Ryan? And just the idea of maths for me makes my penis turn into like a chode. I hated it. I couldn't have thought of anything worse at school than maths because I don't know. And also I just used to say to my maths teachers like, what the fuck are we doing? I've got, even back then in the 90s, had a calculator on my phone. I'm never going to need any of this. And to this day, every time I do maths, I use my iPhone. Just didn't need it. But
that was a nice picture, Will. Where's that? And where's your screensaver?
I never got to ask
Greece.
And I never got to a point where I was asking that question. Even to the point in A-level, we did something called imaginary numbers. It's a number that doesn't exist. And we were doing calculations using these numbers that don't exist to try and punch out real numbers on the other side. So even at that point, I wasn't asking why are we doing this. I was just like, oh, if that's the technique that we use, that's what we do, and let's get on with it. In fact, it's the rugby side of me what has started questioning what I used to do. So I've gone backwards a little bit. So now I can analyse it from afar because I'm not in that environment anymore. I analyse what was I doing then? Why was I doing that? Which is a bit, but that's because the rugby side of the rugby environments made me think of maths in that way.
I can just already picture it. The kind of the Ryan Hall that could have been as well had he not gone into rugby with his sort of little briefcase and specs on, walking down the high street in Rothwell, West Yorkshire. Life could have been so different, Ryan.
Yeah, well, it was an interesting story about going to university. So when I was a late developer and I was late coming to rugby league, so I kind of missed out all of the academy, scholarship structures. I was happy playing first team rugby at my amateur club. And that's what I was doing alongside my studying. And then I was lining myself up to do a pure maths degree at Leeds University. So I'd done all the application. I got accepted. I'd done my exams, my A-levels. I'd been accepted into Leeds University, and I was set to go. And that's what I was doing. I didn't know what the end result was going to be. I just thought a maths degree surely is going to open a couple of doors for me. So that's what I was going along with, and then I got a phone call from Tony Smith, just saying, "Do you fancy having a go at full-time rugby league?" And it was like I made the decision over a phone call. It was like I was thinking my brain should be, touch wood, in a decent nick for the rest of my life, but my body will only be good enough to do rugby league at this age. So I agreed with him straight then and there. I says, "Yeah, I'll see you." I think it was 7th of November for pre-season, and that was the decision made.
I love that because there are always those little stories, Wilco, aren't there? Like we've spoken to so many people on this podcast where I guess you could kind of transfer that to any sort of walk of life and other careers and so on. But like Ryan was playing for the Alton Raiders. And, it just happened to be that, a former Leeds coach was watching on and whatever. It's just those tiny little moments in life that had that not happened, Ryan, who knows, that whole career may have been non-existent. And Wilco, we see it so many times. You probably had that same sliding doors moment.
Yeah, for sure. Careers and success in life is often hinged on like these moments. And It's difficult to predict when those moments are. But timing, I'm a big believer of timing in life, and the right place, right time, and actually producing a performance or doing the right thing at the right time, produces remarkable results. And for somebody like Ryan, I think sport actually, if we look at the Olympics, just, Helen Glover, one of the rowers, was not an elite athlete. She was missed out by all of the talent ID programs, and there's something to be said in sport for finding good where it shouldn't be. Now, there shouldn't have been somebody as good as Ryan Hall playing at that level at that time. But the fact he was playing to the level he was at that level, is quite remarkable. And often, I think clubs want to identify talent at 10, 11, 12 years old. And I just think it's an archaic way of viewing recruitment. I think you can find the most resilient, most robust, most durable, the athletes that aren't exhausted by this academy and scholarship system can often be found in other places, and Ryan's an example of that. What I'm really interested in is what the fuck is pure maths? Do you know what I mean?
Ask that?
As opposed to what? Like maths, which is impure in its definition, but this is pure maths. It's not maths with an edge. It's pure maths.
Yeah. It's just what they called it. So you get your statisticians, if I can pronounce it properly, who do purely stats-based stuff, and then your physicians and your engineers who use applied maths. So like you're always using the maths side of things to work out, levers or how to design buildings and all that sort of stuff. But pure maths is literally finding numbers within equations and going down the imaginary complex numbers route of just crunching numbers, like the Beautiful Mind when he's writing equations on the board, and it's just all that sort of stuff. That's the pure maths, where there's really not much applicant for it. It's just what can numbers mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm just got this like really vivid sort of vision of Ryan Hall when he's playing the game. It's almost like the Matrix. Well, do you know? There's just percentages. There's distances. There's speeds. There's imaginary numbers. Maybe there's an imaginary number for catching the ball above your head or something. And maybe Ryan worked it out. He had a little chalkboard at home, and he got his coloured like chalks out, and he's worked out the algorithm to solve catching the ball above your head. And he's not told anyone. Do you know what? One thing I forgot to say about Ryan, very selfish man. He worked rugby league out via an equation, and he's kept it to his little self. What a bastard.
You know what? I can see him sort of just like staying behind afterwards as well, and Robin Williams comes in, and they're just there, sort of good Ryan hunting. They're just like making equations and drawing things all over the wall. But I go on, Ryan.
I can't disagree with any of that. I might have found out a formula for winning. I don't know, if I ever become a coach, I might spread it to other people, but for now it's under my own.
Well, mate, at least you're absolutely sorted for post-rugby, aren't you? Just walking straight into an accountancy role somewhere. I mean, most of these idiots that we speak to every week have, like Wilkin and Flash are thick as two short planks and have to come up with some sort of coffee business, which is, desperate and cringing. But Ryan, let's rewind a little bit, because I really want to get stuck into Leeds and the sort of the mindset at Leeds and everything that went with the machine that was Leeds back then. But you were born in Rothwell, and we mentioned it earlier. The home of, by the way, from my research, David Batty and Alan Smith, the former Leeds United players. And did you know, well, and also Gary Schofield, we should say, he's from Rothwell. But Rothwell, this was my most interesting bit of research from Rothwell, is part of the historic Rhubarb Triangle, with the town and the surrounding areas sort of famed for having once produced 90% of the world's rhubarb, Jon Wilkin.
That's a stat, Will, and that's numbers, and that's math. And Ryan is excited by that number. Well, how did he grow rhubarb, out of interest? They grow it in sheds, don't they? In the dark.
Do they?
Did they? I've seen fields and fields of it around me. So it's, I'm put it outside then. Under a greenhouse tent, they do the tents within the field. I think they go under there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There you go.
That's as much as I know.
Rothwell.
I don't know much about. Yeah.
But go on, what was Rothwell like then, growing up there? I mean, because it's quite a small little place, 20,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I love where I come from, all my background. I wouldn't change it for anything. I obviously had a great group of friends, all from Rothwell, and very similar to me. Similar backgrounds and everything. And it's like when you have a common, I won't say a common goal, but some things in common. You great friends, form from that, and I still keep in touch with my friends from that sort of time, through school and all that sort of stuff now. So it's really good that we have got a lot of things in common from where I'm from, and it's made things easy. I never had any hard times or anything like that. So I really enjoyed my childhood, and we had all the facilities like in Rothwell. You said it's pretty small. It had everything that I needed. You need a little shopping precinct, if you ever need anything, and a park, a skate park, and as many fields as you want to go running around it. And that's all we needed really, as young boys, just go and gives the ball and gives an empty field, and I'll go out when the sun rises and come home from a tea. Quite easily pleased.
You should be on the Rothwell tourist board. I like that. At first I was thinking kind of League of Gentlemen, and now I want to get a place there. Look, Ryan, so to me from the outside, and tell me if I'm wrong, you seem to sort of smash the senior academy team at Leeds, because you came to it quite late, as you just said, and it all went so well, and that transition to the first team seemed sort of so smooth. You mentioned that you made your debut there on the Magic weekend. I think it was in Cardiff, wasn't it, 2007? And you kind of really never looked back from that point, from a Leeds point of view.
Yeah, well, I think like John says, special moments, it's all about timing, and I never had any reference point to go back to, from a negative, point of view. So some of the other players who'd come through the academy system and, on the scholarships, and they maybe had some negative experience, through that time about maybe being dropped or maybe being not selected in the big games. I never had any of that. So when I came up to my debut, I just took it as all right, okay, that's what we're doing. And then next game it was like, yeah, I'll carry on. And when I didn't play, which because quite a few occasions after my debut, because there was quite a number of players going after one shirt in the Leeds team at the time. There's me, Lee Smith, Danny Williams, Ashley Gibson, Jordan Tansley, all vying for one wing spot. So there was many a time when I didn't play, but I never, I wasn't downhearted by that. Like some people can get downhearted and go off on a tangent and, take their eye off the ball, but I never had to deal with that, because it was always a positive for me, because it was just, I've kind of fallen into this job that I'm doing, and every day was a bonus. And like I love what I'm doing. I was playing it from for enjoyment at the weekends normally, but now I'm getting paid to do it. It was I think that was a blessing in disguise. But I didn't have any negative past events to go back to.
I think that's really interesting. Do you know that what we do is we prep young people to be professional athletes from such a young age that you can. I think you get so much enthusiasm for something, and you get so much resistance to negativity towards something. And I often think a lot of that negative energy we put into younger people at an age where they're not able to process it. Where you say somebody like Ryan, where he's just excited and encouraged by the opportunity he's given. And I just wonder in professional sport, do we put too much pressure on young people? Do we make it all about results? You picked, you're not, you're in, you're out, things are going well or they're going bad? Or is there a way to do it where we cultivate a mindset like what Ryan had? And it reminds me of myself when moving from Hull KR to St Helens, where all of that was just positive. I hadn't really had any negative experiences until, I was 18, 19. So by the time some negativity came my way, it was just absorbed by a wave of positivity that I just developed over a period of time. So I think listening to Ryan, he's not the first person, but I just wonder, Will, I think in general in sport, are we placing too much emphasis on you're in or you're out, you're selected or you're not, you get a tracksuit or you don't? at a time when people's resilience and self-esteem is just not robust enough to deal with that. You know, if you look back to Ryan's time, and Ryan,
you need to develop that side of your personality, don't you? And the young people are quite susceptible for all things, you know, so they can go wayward quite easily, like you say, if you get too many negative, you know, events going on.
I mean, look, you won absolutely everything at Leeds, Ryan, and you don't need reminding of this, but, you know, 6 Super Leagues, 2 Challenge Cups, 2 World Club Challenges, you scored over 200 tries. We've had loads of people, haven't we, Wilco, from that Leeds era on the podcast over the last 3 years. But for you, Ryan, when you're part of that winning machine, a lot of it, I imagine, just sort of snowballs. I'm not saying there's luck involved or whatever, but you're not thinking about that winning machine every week. But when you look back on that time now at Leeds, who were the sort of key cogs for you, the most important people that made that work and made you so successful?
Oh, it's certainly Kev. Kevin Sinfield was number 1 on the list. First day of pre-season, in the first team, he was there. It's normally the time where the youngsters just come back in, you know, or you maybe get an injured fringe, you know, first teamer, but. Kev was there because he didn't go on the Great Britain tour that year, end of 2006. So going into 2007, he was in from the first day of pre-season, and he just said some things to me, some unwritten rules about how we operate, and then that stuck. That I still live by them, you know, to this day. All because you know, he was there on day 1. So that
can you share a couple of those, or are they top secret?
Oh, no, there's no, you know, major in there. It's just about your punctuality and how you dress and, you know, your diet, basically. All the 1%ers. You turn up, well, Lombardi's rule, you know, you turn up to training 15 minutes early or your class is late. That's a simple one. So every time I go training now, I'm always 15 minutes early. I've done it for 14 years. It's just, it's been now built into me, and he kind of set that, you know, that president, you know, right from the off. And it's only a simple one. There's loads of things like that about you wear your kit properly. You know, you wear your right attire when you need to. You know, like if there's no baseball caps allowed around training, you don't wear a baseball cap. It's just that sort of thing. It's the little bits what accumulate, you know, some self-worth. You know, like you really value it, and some things you can carry going forward, and you know, you take pride in yourself, and you can really, you know, it's a decent base to start from.
I mean, that is really interesting, because Wilco, do you remember a couple of weeks ago we had Daryl Powell on, and that was one of his first things, and it sounded kind of not that impactful really, but when you think about it and the tone that it sets, you know, that was the first thing that he said was, what you turn up in, you don't wear anything that's not protocol, it's not club kit. I mean, you know, we always make these comparisons with footballers, and we talk about the culture and how it can change in football and how it should be more like rugby and so on. Surely that should be one of the first fucking things in football. I mean, some of them turn up looking like a bin bag's mated with a banana. It's like, that's your first point of getting everyone on the same level, isn't it? You all wear the same stuff because you're all at the same level. It doesn't matter if you've been here for 20 years or 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? I think, you know, Pep Guardiola, you know, I think it was Ibrahimovic was wanting to drive his yellow Ferrari to training at Barcelona, and he said, look, we're sponsored by Audi or whatever, we all drive the Audis, we want to be a bit more humble than that. And there's certain things that ripple under, you know, rules and expected behaviours that ripple under all good organisations, don't they? And you know, punctuality, respect, you know, discipline in terms of your appearance. You know, these are all relatively basic things, Will, but you're so right to say how often those things are not adhered to. And, you know, I'm a big believer that good leaves evidence, doesn't it? And the opposite can be said is bad leaves evidence as well. And whenever you're in an environment that is a bit reckless, that is a bit looser than you used to be, the things that stand out to me are maybe that lack of punctuality, you know, the sort of free and loose way in which people present themselves. And, you know, the simplest things are often the hardest and most difficult things to adhere to because they are so simple. And, you know, we look at, like, say, the military, you look at the Marines now, you know, do they need to get out of bed, make the bed and polish the boots? Does it operationally make them any better at what they do? Well, the answer's probably not, but by starting and setting those standards early, it allows them then to go on and be organised and be creative when they need to be. And
well, even that book, I'm sure you're referring to that, Wilco. You know, that Make Your Bed book by Admiral William McRaven, which is, you know, it's about 100 pages long. Yeah. Give that to every fucking Premier League footballer. It's setting a standard, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think, look, one of the big differences that I've, you know, as an outsider observed, and let's, as a point of reference, talk about the Leeds team that was so successful that Ryan was part of, is that I believe football is an individual sport. The best teams come together as a collective, but in the main, it's quite a mercenary individual sport where people will protect their own ends, whereas rugby league has not been corrupted by money and by power. So if we look at the great Leeds team that won everything and was the best, maybe best Super League team we've seen, it was the power of the collective that made it. Because you know, I don't think they were the best team, Ryan. You know, throughout all that time, I think there was times in which, you know, the team I was playing for, we would have sat back and thought we're a better side than Leeds. But it was only through working with Brian McDermott I realised how strong that collective was and how you know, well every single part of that team did its job, you know, magnificently well and in great organising.
I'll agree with you there. And like, it wasn't other teams that would probably sit back and say that we're a better team, because we'd agree with you. We sat there and we addressed it. You know, in 2011 when we were coming ninth at one point and then we ended up finishing fifth. We ended up winning the grand final, but we were nowhere near the best team that year. It's just because we identified, like, every time we go on the field, you've got to realise that we are not the best team. You've got to fight for every inch, everything that goes on, you know, on the field, because we're not the best. And that got the best out of us, you know. So it was really, really powerful, like, conversation that we had. You know, I think, well, Kev led it actually about, you know, we have to realise that we're not the best team, and I'm agreeing exactly what you're saying there. Like, I don't think we were the best team, but we just stuck together.
That's unbelievable, Will, isn't it? To think of that you know, like we spend so much time like pushing this positivity message and that anything's possible and you know speaking, you know, anything's possible. You know, we are great. We can do whatever we want. And here's a team that was infinitely successful, you know, admitting to themselves that at a point in time, we are not the best team. And the interesting thing is that if your self-esteem and your culture is not strong enough, that could break down. But like I said about Leeds at the time, is when you've got a strong enough group of people and a strong enough culture, actually honesty has like a multiplier effect of how good you can be. If we all sit here and go, right, actually, guys, look around. You know, our team's not quite as good as theirs, but here's what we can do, and that's how you get better. And you know, I think lots about the period in which Ryan's team were very successful, and I think lots about the Leeds team versus the Saints team at the time. And the difference was we had a stubbornness in belief that we were better than everyone. Leeds had a stubbornness to go and win games however they could, and there was a difference there in the mindset. And you know, I used to stand back and admire the way Leeds played, and especially in big games, Ryan. That was a feature of your time at Leeds, wasn't it? Big games, big performances.
Well, yeah, like we obviously analysed you just as much as you analysed us, and you'd score tries that we couldn't score. The level of rugby that you played was just so high. So our task was to not let you do that. It sounds simple, but like, what can we do to stop you doing that? And in the big games, that's all we did. We had to make you the team that you were not. You know, make you a different team.
Yeah.
And it's just grinding. It's a horrible like process. What we have to do to you, we have to kick you into a corner. We have to not let you out of that corner. We've got sometimes fingers crossed that it's going to rain, which it did the majority of the time as well.
It did. It did, didn't it?
Yeah, we wake up and go, oh, God,
do you know what?
It's raining.
I mean, I remember, Ryan, as well, you know, those years. I think it was sort of 2009 to 11, 12, whatever. And, you know, everyone was was dubbing you the best winger in the world. You were scoring 30 tries a season, all sorts of different tries. I know you said you didn't score the same sort of tries that Saints were scoring, but you still scored some ridiculous tries. One thing I was thinking is the mathematician who I saw recently doing an interview for Hull KR saying that he doesn't count the tries and it's all about the team and so on. This is the maths man who clearly knows exactly. He's got an abacus in his bag just on the sidelines. He knows exactly how many he scored. But when people were calling you the best and you were being dubbed that, I've known you half an hour now. You're quite a modest mouse. How did that manifest with you? Did you even process that? Was it just something you didn't even let enter your mind space?
I always kept it at arm's length. Rob Burrow actually used to go on a lot of time. He used to call me WBW, very tongue in cheek, but he used to say it. But I used to just keep it at arm's length and just give it a nod. In fact, one year the media got me in the group, to select the shortlist for the Golden Boot. I have no idea how that even came about. But 2011, I was on shortlist for a Golden Boot. I was like, Jesus Christ, like, please don't put this on me because someone's going to ask me a question about it. And I was like, I don't even want to be in selection for like that. I'd rather make it a 5-man shortlist rather than 6 because it's just not worth it. But yeah, them things are. You just got to I just keep it at arm's length and keep my feet on the ground.
Yeah. What was that like leaving Leeds, Ryan? Because obviously you went to the NRL. We'll touch on that in a second. With John's fanboy friend, Sonny Bill Williams, who you left the Roosters with. We'll get into that as well, John. The only human being I've ever seen Wilkin fanboy in his existence on this planet.
He walked in, we all went, hi.
Has he pied you, Wilco? By the way, does he still WhatsApp you back?
Yeah, we speak twice a day, really. Just the time difference has made it awkward. Quite often FaceTime. Just me and Sonny. Very tight still.
Talk about God and stuff.
He's still following my sort of get lean routine that I've been sort of preaching for a number of years, and it's working for him. It is working for him.
Get lean in 15 minutes. Go on, look. So Ryan, that moment then when you left Leeds, I guess you probably thought you were never going to come back, even though you were late 20s. That was a tough time, wasn't it?
The season to leave Leeds?
Yeah, everything that went with it.
Yeah, I think my time at Leeds has finished. I've been there for 11 years. Pretty much, like you say, I've achieved everything multiple times, and it was just time for a change. To be honest, my mojo, for rugby league was kind of dying, and it just needed a refresher. It needed just something different. Like it wasn't I need to try and find something better. It wasn't the case of that. I need something just different, and obviously that fueled my decision to leave, and ultimately I ended up signing a very, very good team, in Australia, which instantly, as soon as I landed in Australia, I got my mojo back straight away, because I was in first day of pre-season with all the young kids, because I was injured at the time. I had a long way to come back from injury, but I had so much energy around me, so much enthusiasm, what the young kids can give. Because they're all the Australian boys are like, they've got pictures on the wall of the NRL players. That's what their number one idol is. All across Australia, that's what goes on. It's a little bit different in England. You still get lots of energy from the young kids, but it was a different energy. It was like they're here to achieve their absolute number one dream, and they kind of just give me a load of energy just by doing that as well. I
mean, Wilco, we again have had so many people that have gone to the NRL and, either it hasn't worked out and they've come back, or injuries have got in the way, or, homesickness. And not a lot of people really that have left Super League and then gone on to have a 5, 6, 7 year career in the NRL, have they?
No, yeah, and it's tough, isn't it? It's not just round the corner. It's a long way away, and I think you can be quite romantic about like the idea of going out there. But if you look at George Williams and a few other players, when times get tough, COVID has probably exacerbated the situation when people are stuck halfway around the world. It's been hard enough being in the same country and not being able to see people. the feeling of isolation, being stuck in another country that far away, is really tough. So the biggest challenge for me is not a rugby challenge; it's a geography challenge, and I think the players who can, I know this sounds really ruthless, but kind of sever ties with the UK and just see it as like this is a new start, a new life, tend to go on and do very well. But like everything, look, we said at the top, timing is everything. And the timing to get it right can just subtly be wrong or right. And the timing of an injury can be wrong or right. The timing of a contract renewal can be wrong or right. And you need a coincidence of 5 or 6 things to go your way for, decisions like that to work out. And it's very difficult and to get that right. And in what is, Brian, isn't it? An exceptionally tough competition, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, to pick up on what you said there, you need 5 or 6 things to go right to kind of get the best of it. I think I had 5 or 6 things that go wrong just to, really multiply how bad it was going to go. Obviously, injuries.
ACL, COVID,
Yeah, massive, kicking balls, really, that one. I played the majority of the season, my career at Leeds, untouched, bomb-proof pretty much, without injury. Or, like, if I did get injured, fairly minor, and then soon it was 3 weeks after I'd signed at the Roosters on the line that I did my ACL, first major injury where I needed surgery to come back from. So that was a learning curve as well, because I'd not learned how to be injured. It sounds odd, but I'd not learned how to be injured and come back from that. But I had to do that in a new country, with all the things going on. So that was one of the major things that I think where I didn't really succeed, is where people say that I could have done, really.
Well, that to me, Ryan, seems like probably the first time in your career from the outside that you faced that level of adversity. You're a confident guy, and you went over there as this try machine, and obviously all those obstacles got in your way, with like the ones we mentioned. It was a nasty ACL injury, COVID, and all the other things, the geography that goes with it. But you didn't score a single try in Australia, and when you picture how it would have worked out, very differently, and like you said, that is a really interesting point that Wilco says. It's not just 1 or 2 things going right, and you do need bits of luck, and you need things to click into place. But that must have been a real challenge for you, because you weren't used to things not working for you and not going your way.
Yeah, well, that's right. I'd fallen into the job at the start, and then I got, it was just so happens that the team I was playing for was a very good team, the Rhinos, when I first started. So things just fell into place for me, at the young age. But when I went there, things were going the opposite way. And the injury didn't help. And then the fact that I went to the best side in the world 2 years running, I had to try and break into the team with other world-class players around me. That would have been a struggle if I was, free from injury. So it was tough, and I think the games I did play, obviously I didn't score a try, but like I said this from day one I ever played. It's not, for me, it's not about scoring tries. You referred back to the interview I did at the start of the year with KR. I still have the same, I had the same philosophy then. It's on the list of priorities for a winger, try scoring is not my number one. It could be, it will be for other people, and people will disagree with what I'm saying there. But from my point of view, it's not. It's what you can do for the rest of the team. Like I said, I've said that all along. And I feel like when I did play for the Roosters, I feel like I brought that part of my game. And I thought I played pretty well. Looking back at stats, I know the game's not done on stats, but if you look back at the evidence and the stats of what I've produced in them games, we were certainly up there with the rest of the players who I was playing alongside and competing for shirts for. It was just, I got back in the team. I was played quite a few consecutive games, then I got another injury which bumped me out of the team, and then too many injuries, and it was just too hard to get back.
In your head, were you thinking when you went there, and I know it's all hindsight's a wonderful thing, but when you went to Australia, were you thinking at the age of 30, right, this is me done, and I'm going to see my career out here and show everyone what I'm about on this side of the world?
Yeah, that's bang on. That's what I wanted to do. I loved where I lived. I know Wilco's talked about the geography side of things, but I absolutely loved where I lived. My wife still says today that, can we go back? And at some point, hopefully we might be able to, but maybe not. Not right now. Not I'm playing for Hull. But so that for me wasn't too much of an issue because it was like an upgrade on where I was before. Like I don't think it would be too many downgrades. I don't think there's somewhere you can go to in the world and go to Bondi and be a downgrade. So it was, it was a beautiful place to live, and there was so much to do. And for me to come back from a knee injury, I couldn't think of anywhere better to come back from a knee injury. Sat on the beach on Bondi. So that side of things was great, like I say. But all the boys are great as well. Like you get your personalities within teams, and you get some strong personalities, and every one of the Roosters players were top notch. Really good guys. They had a philosophy that they all employ good people. It was one of the you must be good at rugby and also a good person. It's like one of the criteria to sign for the club, and they've certainly done that. So the group of the players that they've got there still, and when I was there, the top notch lads, and really humble, wanting me to get better and prove myself because they're all on my side. They want me to do well, but it just didn't turn out that way.
But what I do love, Wilco, about sportsmen and women, and Ryan, for example, tell me if I'm wrong, John, could have hung up his boots after Sydney Roosters, and everyone would have just lauded him as like, what an incredible career, but he's come back for more because he's got that itch that he still wants to scratch. There's still an addiction there. The mathematician's still working out some stats which he can upgrade and so on before he does finally call it a day. And we've talked about this before, John, but I'm obsessed with, and I know you and Fran have read the book. I've read it, we all read it ages ago. The Chimp Paradox, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you haven't read that one, it's sensational. Even Happy Sexy Millionaire by Stephen Bartlett, who's a guy who was in Manchester for years. And not all sportsmen, obviously, but I'm obsessed with that winning mindset of successful people. And Ryan, you have that in you, that positive mindset to be able to spin things around. And it seems something that you can actually coach, because I think a lot of people can't have that, and you can educate and read yourself and instill that. Brian McDermott probably did that to loads of people at Leeds, and even later in your career, Wilco, taught you things which you didn't know.
Yeah, it's quite easy to now, as an older man, make sense of things. And I think, I've said this before, I like talking to guys who get into the 30s, like Ryan, because you have this heightened sort of awareness of the world. And for me, my 30s have been a beautiful place where I've started to understand things about myself, about other people, about what's good and what's not. And one thing I do know, and I know this for a fact, is life is fucking tough, right? Whatever you do, whether it's sport, whatever line of work you're in, it's tough. But you've got to work hard at making yourself robust enough to deal with the toughest of times. And sport is an unbelievable place to test how resilient you are. And we see it all the time. We see guys who face adversity and crumble. We see guys who face adversity, fight, and eventually crumble. And then we see guys who consistently just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and are relentless. And those are the types of guys that I enjoy playing with. And those are the types of guys that naturally do exceptionally well at sport. And it's not a sports thing, it's a person thing. And I know a number of people in my life. One of my very good friends is a high court judge, and his mindset is more remarkable than any sportsman that I've worked with. His ability to deal with adversity, overcome it, naturally ride out the undulations of life. Sport exaggerates that because it's a weekly cycle of either success or failure, feedback good or bad, review, analyse, improve, work hard, go again. Now, life's not like that, is it? And that's where life's interested in sport. And now I'm out of sport, it's certainly, that overcoming adversity that defines whether somebody's great or not. And Ryan in Australia, that you said, that period of before he went out to Australia was not full of any sort of negativity. Well, that's bullshit, because it's impossible to have a career in sport that's 11 years long where you don't have some dark days, where things haven't gone right, where you are bottoming out. But that's just an anecdote for life, and in time, if you took a long enough lens over time and you said, right, I'm going to take a 10-year snapshot of life, there naturally would be lows and highs. And Ryan might have experienced a low in Australia in his career sense, but life, is more than just a rugby career. And I think a very long answer to a good question, Will, is dealing with adversity is the biggest thing you can equip yourself with in life, because it's coming. It'll come, and protecting young people from it. But when it comes, be ready for it and deal with it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, you've explained that better than I could ever do. It's bang on.
So were we bang on then, or was I bang on in terms of something else to prove? Because what was it about? And you've shown that you were damn right to keep playing, Ryan. Because the way you're going this season, what are you up to now? Not that you're counting on the abacus. Is it 13 tries as we're recording this? I think it is. But and you didn't need to prove anyone wrong. So what was it about carrying on?
Well, it proved to me that I could still run around, and actually do what I've done all my career. It was like the second injury I got over in Australia wasn't as straightforward as what. Well, no one knows what really went on. So I had some adversity in that, and I needed some further surgery, which was pretty straightforward surgery, really. But that went wrong, and when the doctors didn't really know why I was able to walk, because the screws that they put in my knee just basically snapped. And the thing it was meant to be holding together began not holding together, but I was still able to walk and still able to run around. So for me, none of the doctors could figure out why I was able to walk around. I'm still able to walk around, but that's one of those things where I've just gone, right, I'm gonna keep going until my knee blows up then, because if it shouldn't be held together, but I am and I'm running around. It might go at one point, but it's not gone yet. So I proved to myself that I can still do it. If I go down all the minute at one point in a game, I think you might know what's gone wrong. But yes, more of a personal challenge. I don't have to prove to anyone else apart from myself about running around. Yeah, I just wanted to prove to myself that I could still do it.
That's what's weird about you guys, because Wilco does that sort of weird stuff as well. I remember one thing that always stands out in my mind is after the most ridiculous stag do, Flash's stag do actually, in New York. Wilco, we were all going back in body bags, and Wilco decided to stay on and run the New York Marathon, which was just, again, why? I mean, there's a half hour.
It was a big mistake. Well, let me tell you that. I think I got overtaken by a guy in fancy dress as a hot dog at one stage,
and a fireman with his oxygen tank.
You've got to. To commit to anything for a period of time, you've got to have a pretty weird mindset. And to commit to rugby, which is essentially a rank sport, it's horrible to play. It's makes you feel, it hurts you. It's full of just a lot of it is quite negative. To do it for a period of time, you have to be weird. And like anything, me and Ryan might look at you and think, he's really weird for wanting to do this, what you're doing. And you'll look at anybody, but when you play rugby league, there's something amazing that I know that I miss, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And it's this competitive aggression-y sort of something that I got from rugby that I didn't realise that I enjoyed, and it's only since retiring that I realised I missed it.
Well, look, and who the hell am I to tell you this? But and this is interesting with Ryan as well, because Ryan, are you scared of that moment where it won't be in your life? And look, Wilco, I remember sitting with you having a beer, and the same with Flash, and you don't have to have been there to tell you that. It's almost just a sort of more considered view because you're on the sort of the roller coaster and the treadmill of it every day. That you see people retiring in there, Lee Mossop's retired recently. Obviously, he's had injuries and so on. But at 32, you see people, for me, pulling the plug too early. As Flash has done it, and he's got his reasons, but he tried to do it 2-3 years before that. And it's something that you can never get back unless you do the ridiculous thing and come back. Oh, there could be a comeback for Wilkin. Here we go. Now we're maybe getting to the crux of the matter. But do you know what I mean? It's something that you can't get back, and you've got so many more years to sit there and wonder why the hell you did retire. And once it's gone, it has gone, hasn't it? And like, you still can't put the finger on what that is that you miss every day.
No, but you've got to have a really strong why to carry on.
Yeah.
And you've got to have a really compelling drive to continue. And you can't just continue because you should, and because you think you should, and because your family think you should. You've got to wake up every day and have this burning, horrible like want to win games on a weekend. And I had that all the way to the end. And you know, it was my body that I've still got that now. Like I would still embrace being competitive and wanting to win games, but ultimately, you know, Ryan's waiting for this moment where his knee, you know, he's clutching his knee, he's rolling round, and he's ready for this moment where that's gonna, you know, might happen. Well, you know, that happened to me, you know, where I just was running and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do it anymore. I'd like to do it. I'd love to still be playing, but I just can't do it anymore. and that comes to everyone, Hawley, doesn't it? You know, you see it across sport all the time.
Giving an example of that, Danny Maguire, he you know, hung up his boots a few years ago, but he's a coach at OKR now, and he joins in all the team stuff, and he's running rings around people. He's still got it. He has still got it, but the body I don't think can give out, you know, what he needs to do to play the rest of the game. He's great with ball in hand. He always has been. But yeah, I think he just hurts him too much.
Well, Gareth Ellis was an example of that, wasn't he? He just could never give up and kept coming back in every single capacity until it was like, Gareth, we've cancelled your pass, isn't working on the system anymore, and you're not allowed in the building. But the other thing I was going to say, when you mentioned your knee, Virgil van Dijk recently, obviously, you know, in football, it was out for a whole season, horrible injury. And he was saying this week how he had to learn to fall in love with his knee again, which my ears sort of pricked up when I heard that. But you probably had a similar thing, you know, when you were in that pain and when it was keeping you out of doing what you love doing, you looked at your knee with kind of almost a bit of shame of just like, you know, you have to almost have a conversation and learn to get on with it again.
Yeah, you have conversations with it and you shout at it more than anything. Why do you work so much? Like, what's wrong with you? Give up, like, be normal again. I remember what it used to be like with you, so like, go back to that again. But he's right. You have many conversations because it's such a long injury to come back from. But I had both knees done, so it's such a long. You spend such a long time speaking to it, and you got so, you know.
I just love that imagery of Ryan Hall turning up in his car at the training ground at Hull KR, and he's just in there shouting at both of his knees. Security coming from both sides.
Look, you two. Look, we're going to have a good one today. All right? Yeah. You, sort yourself out, and you, come on. Well, the weird thing about when you're injured is, Hawley, like that, is one thing people don't realise is when you're playing a game, you're used to moving in a specific way, and you're used to feeling a specific way about moving. The hardest thing about injury is not quite being able to move how you felt you could, and falling out of the condition of being able to move in the patterns which you're used to, isn't it? That's a big challenge, Holly, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's massive. Yeah, it's like Virgil says, you have to learn how to run again. But people think after surgery, he'll just bend up and then you're right again. But you don't. You're never fixed after surgery. It just puts you in a slightly better place than you were, you know, whilst you were completely injured. You never go back to how you were before. So you've just got to relearn and, right, this is how it's going to be from now on. Like, if I have to run like that, I'll have to adapt what I do to fix my body, you know, now, and then have to just get by with what I've got. So it took 2 years really to get over that for me. And that was the 2 years at the Roosters, which didn't go as well as I wanted to.
I'll tell you one thing, Will, that he hasn't broken. I'll tell you one thing that isn't broken on Ryan Hall. It's the big fucking fend. Oh my God. Just put his hand like, he's like out here, and this is what you see when you're tackling Ryan Hall. You just get that, and it's like this.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? If you're coming to come near me, I'll just put my arm out and that. There you go.
Stronger than cider.
Well, look, someone's going to get that fend, aren't they, in the whole derby? And we've kept you long enough for an hour, Ryan, and it's flown by. It's been brilliant to hear your insight. But I want us to spend the last few minutes talking about the whole derby, because I said to you before we came on, Wilco, he says a few things which I always remember over the years. But one of them was that his biggest regret in his career was not playing in one of those, and you've got the opportunity to do that. So, what are you expecting for this game? Because it's obviously it's rivals round, the rivals round in Super League this weekend, which is a big weekend in the calendar. But the first experience of this for you, I imagine all the Hull boys have told you everything about it.
Yeah, it's just the way they talk about it. They haven't said anything specifically about what the game is. They're just the fact that they just all want to be on the field at the same time and they can't wait to witness it. Jordan Abdul, obviously one of the Hull natives, he's in the pot at the moment and he's fuming. He wants to cut it off before the game, just put a shit up and off he goes. That's how deep it runs, and so he's not told me anything specific about the game, but just by his actions and by his words, I think I know what's going to come up on Saturday, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Jordan Abdul's like, oh no, Ollie, don't you know? You don't know nothing about the old derby, you know.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna cut this pot off, you know. No, that's exactly what the conversations are going like.
I cannot do with any accents, but that's pretty good. Yeah.
Wilco, what is that like though? I know you never played in it, but you obviously were around it and you've stood on the terraces for it and so on. But because we often get a lot of people on this podcast who say you never fucking talk about Hull. You've always got people from Wigan and Saints and Leeds on. This is the time now to wax lyrical about it for two people who haven't played in it.
Yeah, no, look, I think I'm all about the history of the sport and about like things that evoke some emotion from me. And you think about the history between Hull KR and Hull FC is one of the most beautiful parts of the fabric of the game. It's an unbelievable story for a city that has struggled and that has had its challenges and that still remains, in a situation where it struggles. There's been this point at which the city stops and celebrates something in terms of sport, and the output of the two Hull teams, has probably exceeded the economic, social sort of side of the city. And it's been hugely entertaining. It's been one of the landmark fixtures in the game. And you look back through the history of the game and it's filled with unbelievable Hull, and Hull KR derbies that are beautiful and rich and different to Saints Wigan. I played in 45 Saints Wigan derbies. And don't get me wrong, they are unbelievable and fantastic to be part of, but they're not in the same city and they don't live next door to each other in the main, where you're talking about people living on the same street, having split allegiances, split households. And I just think it's one of the really interesting and fantastic stories in rugby league. And I'm, very jealous of Ryan, and he's just let slip Jordan Abdul's going to play, which is cool. Jordan Abdul's hacksawing his pot off in the background now, just getting ready to play.
And Ryan, do you know what? I mean, we talk about fans being back, and I know you've already experienced that in Super League, but there's going to be something very different about this, isn't there? Just I imagine that the day of the match, the smell, just everything will sort of stand out. The few words that someone you pick up on the sidelines that you haven't heard before, and it's going to be fierce and ferocious, that noise, isn't it? Which is just, your mouth must be watering just at the prospect of that. Towards the end of your career, this is what you live for now.
Yes, certainly. I think in years gone by as well, in past derbies, I think there's always been one side better in the league than the other. Obviously, in recent years anyway, I think Hull KR have struggled in the league, and it's not been really worth anything, in the league, because Hull FC have been quite a strong team for a number of years, and they've finished higher than Hull KR. I think for the last 10 years or even longer than that. So there's not really much worth in the league, but this year we're fighting for playoff spots. Both of us are in the mix for playoff spots. So, there's that added element into it as well. So I think there's going to be some real spice in it. I've seen some comments what Adam Pearson has made already to try to fuel the fire. He's trying to say something along the lines as we're not grand final material, even though other people have been saying that could we see OKR in a grand final, and he's come out and put it on us that we've been shouting all this about ourselves, but we haven't. So he's trying to add some external spice to it, which I'm sure they'll all be added, and we'll kick off on Saturday. We'll see how much spice has been added.
Well, look, that's a good place to leave it, isn't it? And I can't wait to watch it. And all the best, mate. Thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on, because that was a really fascinating bit of insight into, your mindset. And this is what I love, Wilco, about this podcast, because you have an idea of someone, don't you, that you don't know, and then you suddenly, Ryan Hall, maths prodigy. If I told you that, Wilco, you probably knew it already, but that is just something that I'd love the sound of tapping into, and hopefully we did that for everyone listening. Right, Ryan, good luck, mate, at the weekend. John, we'll see you next week with, unfortunately, Flanagan. He's back from that tacky Spanish holiday.
Plenty of this in the derby, Holly. Plenty of this. Get that into some people's faces. All right.
Good man. Cheers, Ryan. Keep in touch. There we go. New episode for you next week. Give us a little follow, everyone who's listening on @OutOfYourRL, and we will see you very soon.